Why do you paint? Why did you start painting? Where did it all come from for you?
So working in NHS is very stressful. I used to work in a hospital, and I felt like my whole life was just work, and then come home, and then work. So I needed something just to be an outlet for all of that. And I think working in healthcare, you give so much of yourself to other people. You also need to have a full cup to be able to give that back to people. So I picked up a paintbrush again. I used to always draw when I was little, but I never really expressed it in my older, like adult life. And yeah, it just flowed, and it was just a very nice outlet, resting place for me.
So was there like an inner need that you were trying to attend to when you were started drawing, and what was that like when you started like painting more regularly and creatively? What do you feel when you completed painting, for example?
Balanced, I guess. It helped me find that, like we were speaking about earlier, but that equilibrium, that sort of like middle point where I'm not always like giving to other people. I've got like a home for myself to put coins in my bank a little bit.
And I think that's so important for creatives, and I think a large part of the reason I wanted to have you on today is because of that aesthetic and that like balance that you're talking about. I very rarely see that when it comes to artists. We're always focused on the next thing, focused on doing, and we were talking about this. You mentioned yesterday in your call about how you didn't want to be so sucked into the capitalism of what art is.
No.
Talk to me about that.
So I'd say my brand is like anti-capitalism, but in like the softest way possible. So I built my brand on kindness, and just I wanted art to be accessible for everyone. I think it's a very nepotistic world, very fueled by capitalism. But really the beauty of all of it is the creating and the art and the outlet for the artist as well. And I think you make better art when you're not chasing that money in that bag, because you're creating from like a balanced place.
In a place of genuine like seeking genuine connection, I suppose. Yeah.
I'd say it's like purposeful to me. I'm very into like Eastern psychology, and there's a concept called like ikigai, like purpose. It's like, what can you bring from the world? What can you give to the world? What's purposeful to you? And finding that like middle point. And I think art was that for me, because I can share my knowledge of the world through my art, but it's also purposeful to me, and it helps me, and it fills my cup. So it's like a nice balance in that sense.
Yeah, I think it's true. I want to definitely touch on philosophy and difference in Eastern and Western philosophy and the role that plays in an artist's life, because I think it's so important. But you mentioned kindness and that being the kind of what you've kind of fostered your brand around. What does kindness mean to you, especially when it comes to art and like giving back and all that stuff there?
So when I first started my brand, I didn't sell any paintings. I was just giving paintings to friends, family. I think the first painting I ever made, I just made it as like a gift for someone, and then someone happened to buy it. And then I continued making like gifts for family, and then that would give me something to post, and then that's how the brand was built. But also, like spaces I was in, I would give things, because I think giving is important. I think kindness is important. People deserve a little bit of love, and it shouldn't be transactional. I think that's the difference between kindness and like giving for receiving something back. Like you're just giving it out of your heart and that overflow that you have.
I think that comes from a place of just you genuinely feeling that love for yourself, or like feeling that love for the world, because it's very hard to give when you're so like, and I think that's what you mentioned about capitalism. That's what it kind of creates. It kind of like a zero-sum mentality where we all feel like we have to take, because if we don't, then we're not going to get our what we deserve. But I think, I don't believe that's the right way to approach art. I don't believe that's the right way to approach life either.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Definitely not. I think it's only got a point that it can reach before it starts to fail. And I think the world is sort of shifting and seeing that, like, we can only reach this point. Then people burn out. We only have so much, we're human. So we're thinking of new ways to do things. Communities become more important. And it's not so centered around like money anymore, which is good. But I think ego stops that for a lot of artists.
What do you mean?
I think you have to drop your ego to give things for free. Especially your art
that
you've made from like your heart and your soul. I think to give that without money in return is a very hard thing to do when you're living from ego.
How did you balance that? How did you get over that?
I think philosophy, religion.
Mm.
I'm a big, like, knowledge seeker.
Mm-hmm.
And every piece of knowledge has led me to ego being the enemy. Like, ego doesn't serve you.
Mm-hmm.
And you only find that true happiness and, like, satisfaction when you shed that ego and let go of it.
I think that's so true. I think one thing I had to realize as I'm going older was, like, I say this a lot of my poems about how ego is kind of like the enemy, and letting go of ego is zen, because, like, you hold on to so much of your identity, and you kind of think that identity is important, but you confuse it with ego, and, like, ego tries to kind of, like, hold. But I think that the beautiful thing is that kind of come together of, like, understanding that you and another person are just basically the same, just from two different perspectives. I think that's a lot of Eastern philosophy that I've learned, a lot of, like, Eastern kind of, like, poetry, and I think that's kind of, like, coming to that from that perspective. But the question I have for you was more around your relationship with that idea of, like, art and creating art and giving it away. Has that always been the case? How's your relationship with art changed over time, do you think? And where do you see it? Where do you see it going next?
I think because from childhood to adulthood, there was such a big gap where I didn't even make art. And that was my ego battle. It was like, this is not good enough to share with the world. People aren't going to want to see this. They're not going to want to buy this. So I think for me, giving it from a place of kindness, which was very natural for me, like, I'm a very giving, caring person, allowed me to give purpose to make art. And I was like, okay, maybe you're not going to make money from it, but, like, you're making people happy, you're making family smile, you're making, like, neighbours smile from like gifting them art, and that made it purposeful to me. And then as a result, I started, like, selling it, but that wasn't the main sort of fuel to the fire.
I'm guessing for you too, there's been such a progression in creating that. So, like, maybe at the beginning you might not want to share it, but over time you start feeling the love that you get from sharing and how people make you feel. Has that been the case for you? The more you share it, the more you kind of grow within yourself too.
Yeah, I think I try not to seek validation from art, because I think it's good to just create what you want to create, regardless if people like it or not. But obviously it helps when community support you and they see what you might not see and be like, oh, this is really cool, like, you should share this more.
What kind of, talk to me about community then. Let's talk about community. Now, you've talked about how the community is like kind of changing a little bit from being money focused to now being more about sharing, I guess. What have you found in all the communities, even part of the poetry, the art, even the anime?
So I think community is a very important resting place for people, because especially people with big hearts, because you can't do this life alone. Like, it's not easy. And I'm a physio by profession. I always tell my patients, like, the biggest indicator of longevity is to have community and people supporting you. And I think in the West, in Britain, it's been diminished as a concept. Like, we don't have community anymore in this country anyway. But I'm Irish originally, and community is really important for us. We share, we're kind, we check on our neighbour. All of that is, like, the centre of Irish, like, culture. So I think eventually finding that here has really allowed me to, like, blossom. Because you see people that have like-minded souls, similar values, and it makes you feel very seen, because you're like, oh, there's other kind people. There's people that like to do things for charity. We can work together, we can build communities and share from this cup of overflow that we've all filled into each other, and really give back to the world through that, which is important.
I agree. And I think there's, like you mentioned before, there's that understanding now the importance of community. I think that's so important, especially when it comes to the online field that we're all caught up, we're all in, because you can get caught up in, dissociating yourself from the people around you because you just see them online, and I think the online space especially is such a zero something. But when you meet people in real life, when you see people in real life, you feel that. And I think the community that you're part of too, which is like the poetry community or the art community, there's such a genuine love that is, embedded into the art itself.
Yeah.
That makes it easy because, everyone's sharing, them a part of themselves, and you can see human beings as they're supposed to be seen.
And it's aligned values as well. It's like you all have the same, not the same heart, because everyone's a little bit different, but similar hearts, and you care about the same causes politically, maybe not philosophically, but you've got the same sort of mindset.
Yeah, like ethos. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Another part where I really, really like about your art was when I would look at it and like take it in, there was a stillness that came over me. And I was wondering if that was intentional, like where, or is that just like a part of your character that just comes through into your painting too?
I really like that because I was always a very, very anxious person until I really like fell into art, fell into religion. And I feel like I've reached a point of stillness lately. So for that to be expressed in my art, that makes me feel very happy. It's not intentional, but maybe it is just a reflection of me and where I am.
I think almost all the time art is that, you know, and it's just such an interesting journey. And because it's so interesting that you could get to a place there, and then because of your art, you can make other people feel that same emotion. You know, like where I relate to that is maybe through my poetry, where it's very introspective. It's very much me figuring out my life and my experiences.
Yeah.
And when I share with other people, they go, oh, like it made me think a little bit about. I'm like, oh, okay, like that wasn't the intention. It was just me literally figuring out my life.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you felt that. I'm glad you were able to take that from it, you know.
Yeah.
What is your relationship been with poetry? Let's tangent for a little bit there.
Poetry